Hi, I'm Jono. Welcome to a Lunatone application video. In this video, we'll go through how to correctly power your DALI system using a Lunatone power supply. Additionally, we'll cover how to troubleshoot common power issues on a DALI line. Let's start with some theory about power in the DALI 2 standard. DALI is a digital bidirectional communication bus. A DALI power supply, a PS, is required in every DALI system to ensure that all devices can communicate over the DALI line. Communication frames are created by shorting and opening the bus, which generates high-level and low-level signals. DALI operates at 16 volts, so it is important to use a DALI-compatible power supply. Standard power supplies are not suitable, as the timing of the rising and falling edges during transitions between high and low levels must be precise. The total current available on a DALI line is limited to 250 milliamps. Exceeding this may damage devices, as they short the bus for communication. Each device draws power for both operation and communication. You can find specific power consumption details in each device's datasheet. The guaranteed supply current of a DALI PS is the key value to consider when selecting a power supply. It is critical to ensure that the total current draw of all connected devices does not exceed 70% of the guaranteed supply current. A 20% reserve is required for dynamic processes, for example, addressing, and an additional 10% should be reserved to account for voltage drops caused by long wire lengths and terminal points. Multiple power supplies can be connected in parallel on the DALI line, but their total combined output must not exceed 250 milliamps. When using multiple DALI 2 power supplies, please note, not all power supplies are suitable for parallel operation. This must be explicitly stated in the datasheet. If a power supply states, for example, 30 milliamps guaranteed, 250 milliamps maximum supply, it is not suitable for parallel connection. The maximum supply current, not the guaranteed value, is used to calculate how many power supplies can be connected in parallel. While polarity usually does not matter when connecting DALI devices, it must be correct when using multiple power supplies. Additional installation information. When dimensioning the DALI power supply and the system layout, also consider the diameter of the DALI wiring. With a 1.5 mm square wire, for the DALI line, the maximum wire length must not exceed 300 meters, as measured from the DALI PS. A star-shaped topology with several 300-meter branches is acceptable. This limitation ensures that the voltage drop remains under 2 volts across the maximum wire length. DALI bus installations must use line or star topologies. Ring topologies are not permitted. Let's look at a simple example to understand this concept. In this example, we have a 250 milliamp DALI power supply, providing power to multiple devices. The guaranteed supply current of this device is 200 milliamps. Only 70% of the guaranteed supply current should be used to ensure reliable operation. This means that 140 milliamps, 70% of 200 milliamps, is the recommended usable current. In this case, the connected devices draw 4 milliamps, 4 milliamps, and 2 milliamps, for a total of 10 milliamps, which is well within the 140 usable limit. Because the total current draw is below both the recommended 70%, 140 milliamps, and below the maximum of the power supply's 250 milliamps, the system will operate normally. For Lunatone devices, current consumption values can be found in our online catalog or individual device datasheets. If you're using a third-party DALI 2 compatible device, check the datasheet to calculate the total current draw. Practical example, wire disconnect. Now that we've covered the theory, let's look at some practical examples. This setup includes CS sensors, an MC input device, a 250 milliamp DALI power supply, a 24 volt dimmer, and an LED strip. If your DALI 2 power supply has a test button, you can use it to send a max or off signal, or use it to send a test sequence. If some devices do not react, it may indicate devices are not connected to the DALI line, or there is a faulty device. If a wire becomes disconnected from the DALI line while your system is running, no commands can be transmitted, and the system will stop responding. As a result, dimmers will set their luminaires to their system fail level. A similar behavior occurs in the event of a short circuit on the DALI bus. In this case, dimmers will set their luminaires to the system fail level. If your power supply has an LED, it will begin to flash to indicate that there is a fault. Pressing the test button will not trigger any response from the dimmers, as no communication can occur on a shorted bus. If wiring is intact, but the cable length is too long, or the wire cross-section is too small, an excessive voltage drop may occur. In such cases, devices furthest away from the power supply are most likely to fail first. To verify this, measure the voltage of the DALI power supply and the furthest device from the power supply using a voltmeter. The voltage drop between both measurements should not exceed 2 volts. The DALI voltage should be at least 11.5 volts at the power supply and no less than 9.5 volts at the furthest device. Note, for accurate readings, ensure that there is no communication occurring on the DALI bus during measurement. DALI cockpit behavior during power loss or short circuit. If a DALI USB or other interface is connected and the Lunatone DALI monitor software is open, when the DALI line becomes disconnected or shorted, the following message will appear: bus power supply disconnected or bus short circuit. In this situation, in Lunatone Cockpit, the indicator next to the connected DALI USB or interface device will turn grey, indicating that the DALI bus is no longer powered. Any attempt to address on the DALI line using the USB interface will result in the error DALI bus error. These same errors appear in both cases, whether the bus is disconnected or there is a short circuit on the DALI line. Resolving DALI bus errors. To resolve errors related to a disconnect or short circuited DALI line, reconnect loose or disconnected wires. Use the test button on the DALI power supply to identify devices that do not respond. These are likely not properly connected to the DALI bus. Locate and fix any short circuits. To isolate the short circuit, disconnect sections of the DALI wiring one at a time and observe the LED on the DALI power supply. When the LED stops flashing, the shorted section has been found. Check for excessive voltage drop. If devices furthest away from the DALI supply are not functioning, measure the voltage at the power supply and at the furthest device. If the drop exceeds 2 volts, use thicker cables or reposition the DALI power supply closer to the center of the wire layout to reduce total cable length. Underpowered system example. Let's consider a system with 50 dimmers that take up 2 mA each, 5 MC input devices that take up 4 mA each, and 10 CS sensors that take up 4 mA each. The total current consumption is 5 times 2, 5 times 4, 10 times 4, for a total of 160 mA. While this is below the guaranteed supply of 200 mA, it exceeds the recommended 70% of 140 mA. Depending on cable length and cross-section, the system may become underpowered, meaning that the power demands may occasionally exceed the supply capacity. In certain cases, system behavior can become unpredictable. It may still function normally when all devices are idle, but failures may start to occur when multiple devices become active at the same time. Devices may intermittently fall back to their system fail level. In the Lunatone DALI cockpit, you may see errors when addressing or reading devices due to the increased communication load, which the underpowered bus cannot reliably handle. To troubleshoot, try disconnecting half of the load from the DALI bus to see if a reduced system works reliably. Solutions for an underpowered DALI system. Next, let's assume an even larger system. 60 dimmers of 2 mA each, 10 MC input devices of 4 mA each, and 20 CS sensors of 4 mA each. The total consumption becomes 6 times 2, 10 times 4, 20 times 4, totaling 240 mA. This exceeds both the recommended 70% limit and the guaranteed supply current of 200 mA, nearing the 250 absolute limit. With such a system, you can expect consistently unstable behavior. Dimmers may not respond to commands. Bus-powered control devices may not transmit any commands at all due to insufficient voltage or current. Solutions for an underpowered DALI system. To resolve issues caused by an underpowered DALI bus. If your system has a total consumption of 100 milliamps and you have a power supply that is only able to provide 80 milliamps, you can add a second power supply to the DALI line. Note, the DALI 2 power supplies are able to work in parallel. The maximum current must not exceed 250 milliamps. And to ensure reliable operation, the total consumption of the system must not exceed 70% of the guaranteed current. Or replace an existing unit with a higher output DALI power supply. If the total current draw of all devices exceeds 250 milliamps, or using a larger or additional supply is prevented. A possible solution is to add a bus extension module, such as the Lunatone DALI repeater or DALI expander. Note, with a DALI expander, there may be addressing restrictions on the secondary side that should be considered. These modules provide a galvanic isolation between DALI lines. They amplify the DALI signal without restricting communication and should be installed centrally between the DALI power supply and the most distant device to ensure signal integrity. An alternative option is if centralized control is not required. Consider splitting the installation into two separate DALI lines, each with their own power supply and control structure. Overpowered system example. An overpowered DALI system occurs when too many DALI power supplies are connected in parallel, resulting in a total output exceeding 250 milliamps, or a non-compliant power supply is used with an incorrect voltage and/or current rating. As DALI devices short the bus during communication, their internal circuits may be exposed to excessive power. This can lead to device damage and burnout. You may observe the following symptoms: errors in the Lunatone DALI cockpit when addressing or reading devices. Lunatone devices will stop communicating if the bus voltage is out of specification. This is to protect themselves. However, note that voltage levels close to 16 volts, which is the normal DALI voltage, may not be detected as problematic until damage occurs. Additionally, if you discover devices with a damaged DALI circuit, always check the bus power supply as a potential root cause for the damage. How to fix an overpowered system. Immediately switch off the power to prevent further damage. Check for incorrect wiring, such as a 24-volt supply mistakenly connected to the DALI bus. Ensure a DALI-compliant power supply is used. If multiple DALI power supplies are connected in parallel, verify that the combined maximum current does not exceed 250 milliamps. Ensure correct polarity across all supplies. Measure the DALI power supply output. Voltages should be within the DALI range of 9.5 to 20.5 volts. Current must not exceed 250 milliamps. Now that we've covered the theory, practical examples, and common power issues, you should be equipped to correctly power your DALI system using Lunatone devices. Thanks for watching. For more videos and helpful guides, check out our YouTube channel or visit our website.